Okay, so you want to do some serious reflection this November, right? But just hearing, think about your year is about as motivating as, like, a soggy napkin at the bottom of the takeout bag.
It's true, not exactly inspiring.
And then someone's like, here's 50 journal prompts, go wild.
Yeah, that's just overwhelming.
That's Lestallion for you, those fancy journals they make. Kind of tempting. But don't worry, today we are diving into their mega list of November reflection prompts and extracting the good stuff just for you.
Because who needs a giant to-do list of introspection? That's not reflection, that's a second job.
No kidding.
We need focused reflection, and honestly, November, it's kind of perfect for that weird little pocket of time where the year's craziness is winding down, but we're not quite drowning in holiday stuff yet.
You're right, it is a good in-between time. And you know what I appreciate about Lestallion's approach here? They're not just saying, recap your year, the end. It's almost like they want November to be your secret weapon.
Your secret weapon. I like that.
Yeah, like, do this right, and you're going to have a better December, a better start to the new year. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What struck me about these prompts, some of them are so specific. It's not just the usual gratitude list stuff.
Absolutely. Specificity is key when it comes to meaningful reflection. For example, one prompt asks you to describe a typical November day for you. But get this, they want you to focus on the senses.
Oh, interesting.
She's like, paint us a picture with your words rather than just giving a schedule recap.
Which, let's be honest, way more fun to both write and read. And then there's this one. What foods do you start craving as the weather gets colder?
Yeah.
Seems simple, but it made me stop and think, like, why do our cravings shift with the seasons? Is it our biology? Nostalgia, pure comfort seeking?
Right. You're tapping into something primal almost. Our ancestors didn't have supermarkets, you know. What you craved had to tie into what was available, what actually kept you alive.
Makes you think.
So Lestallion, they're not just prompting journaling, they're prompting us to think differently about everyday stuff. And they've got prompts to get those creative wheels turning too. There's one where they ask you to imagine a fictional character experiencing their first November.
I love that one. So creative.
Right. It forces you outside your own perspective. If you had to explain November to an alien or someone who'd never experienced it, what details would you even pick? It makes you re-examine what's familiar.
Appreciate it in a new way. I like that. It's like, hey, remember that childlike wonder we used to have about, well, everything?
Exactly.
And speaking of things we often overlook, Lestallion's big on the classic combo.
Yeah.
Look back, then look forward. So gratitude, accomplishments, all that good stuff. But then it's into goals, habits, the usual self-improvement suspects.
But here's where I think their prompts are sneakier than they first appear. They don't just say, be grateful. They ask you to identify what you're grateful for.
Yeah.
And this is the important bit, how that influences your choices going forward.
So it's action-oriented gratitude. It's got to do something, not just sit there looking pretty.
Precisely. And it's the same with the goal-setting prompts. They push you to break those big, scary ambitions down into smaller, actionable steps.
Which, let's be real, is way less intimidating than change your whole life by January 1st.
Exactly. You don't have to climb the whole mountain tomorrow. Let's just get you to base camp this month.
Love that analogy.
Good.
Now, you mentioned earlier how November is a unique time for reflection, which I'd never really thought about before. What is it about this month which, let's be honest, is kind of the Jan Brady of the calendar that makes it so perfect for this kind of deep dive?
Okay, so November. Not exactly known for being the most exciting time, you're right.
It's true.
But think about it this way. The summer excitement has faded. We're not yet hit with the craziness of the holidays. And there's this undeniable shift in the air,
Yeah, it's definitely got a vibe.
Days are shorter, the nights are longer. It's almost like nature itself is telling us to slow down, turn inward a little bit.
The world's hitting the pause button.
Exactly. And whether we consciously realize it or not, seasons do impact us psychologically.
They do.
November, in its quiet way, it becomes a potent time for making intentional shifts before, bam, we get swept up in holiday chaos.
Oh, yeah.
It's an opportunity right now to hit the reset button on our values, our priorities, to set the stage for a more intentional December and beyond that even.
Okay, I'm liking where this is going. So we've talked about the overall vibe of these Lestallion prompts, why November's a good backdrop. But let's dive into a specific example, see how this actually works. What do you say?
I'm game. Let's do it.
Okay, how about we tackle that one you mentioned earlier? Describe a typical November day.
Sounds good.
Seems deceptively simple, but I have a feeling it can uncover some interesting stuff.
Oh, for sure. It's all in the details. Let's see what we can dig up.
Okay. For me, a typical November day. It starts with that crisp air hitting my face as soon as I step outside. It's invigorating, almost like a wake-up call from nature itself.
I can already feel it.
Mm.
And that smell of damp leaves, right? Mixed with maybe the faintest scent of wood smoke from somewhere in the distance. It's like the whole world is exhaling after a really long, hot summer.
You were speaking my language. It's amazing how these little sensory details pop up when you actually stop to think about them. I mean, usually I'm rushing off to work, not composing poetry about the breeze. But even then, there's a different energy in the air. People seem a little more introspective.
I've noticed that too. Like we're all collectively bracing ourselves just a little bit. The holidays are coming.
Exactly. And then there's the light. By late afternoon, the sun's already starting to dip below the horizon, casting it's this warm golden glow on everything. It's that perfect twilight hour that feels both magical and melancholic at the same time. Does that make sense?
Totally. That twilight hour in November is special. Like the whole world just holds its breath for a moment. It's suspended between day and night. For me, it's a really potent time for quiet reflection. You kind of let go of the day's anxieties and just surrender to that stillness.
I love that. It's so true, isn't it? Just this one simple prompt can spark such different but equally valid reflections.
It really speaks to the power of individual experience, right? What resonates for one person might not have the same impact on another, and that's fine. It's all about finding those personal connections, those unique threads that speak to your own experience, your own journey.
I like that. So what about you? What does a typical November day look like for you when you strip away all the noise and focus on those sensory details? What comes to mind?
Well, unlike you, I'm lucky enough to work from home, so my November mornings tend to be a bit more, shall we say, leisurely.
I'm jealous.
It usually starts with a cup of coffee, maybe a good book, and there's something so comforting about curling up on the couch with a warm blanket, getting lost in a story as the sun slowly comes up. And then as the day unfolds, I find myself kind of gravitating towards tasks that require more focus, more concentration.
So November is productivity time for you.
It's true. For me, there's a certain clarity that comes with that crisp autumn air, and it really helps me focus on work, on creative projects. It's like my mind is mirroring the natural world, shedding distractions and zeroing in on what matters.
That's fascinating to me because I'm definitely a spring and summer productivity person, but I can see how that seasonal shift, that slowing down, could actually lend itself to really focused work.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it?
It is.
One thing that struck me about your description was how you mentioned those fleeting moments of beauty, like that twilight hour we talked about. And it made me think about how this prompt, in a way, is encouraging us to slow down and really savor those moments, something, honestly, we often forget to do in the rush of daily life.
Oh, 100%. It's so easy to get so caught up in the to-do list, the hustle, that you miss those little things, those little details. I think you're right, though. Lestallion is prompting us to be more present, even amidst, well, everything.
Exactly. And what better time to practice that presence than in November?
Right.
As we transition into the holiday season, which, let's face it, often feels anything but present.
Right. It's like they're giving us a head start on mindfulness training, but disguised as this fun journaling exercise.
Maybe that's their secret agenda. But I think it's brilliant because when you learn to appreciate those small moments of beauty, even just notice them, it changes how you experience everything.
Oh, for sure. Like you're training yourself to find joy in the everyday, even when things are tough.
And speaking of things that can be tough, we've talked a lot about that looking back aspect of these prompts, but Lestallion is also big on looking ahead.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the real magic happens, don't you think? Because reflecting on the past is only half of the equation. The other half is using those reflections to consciously create the future you want. Exactly. It's not enough to just think about your year, right?
Yeah.
The real magic happens when you use those reflections to actually shape the next one. But let's be real, 50 prompts, that's a lot to process. So today we're doing the heavy lifting, cherry-picking some more of the most intriguing ones from Lestallion's list.
And I think you'll be surprised by how these seemingly simple prompts, they can really unlock some profound insights. Ready to dive back in?
Born ready. Hit me with your first pick.
Okay, let's start with this one. What changes in nature do you notice during November? At first glance, it might seem like just a straightforward observation exercise.
Yeah, like write down what you see.
Right, but I think it goes much deeper than that.
I can see that, yeah. It's like, yeah, okay, the leaves are changing color, but what's the deeper significance of that whole transformation?
Exactly. It's about connecting with the natural rhythms of life, with that cyclical nature of growth, decay, and renewal.
It's like nature's giving us a master class in letting go.
Precisely. And that can be a really powerful metaphor for our own lives, especially as we're approaching the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
What are we ready to release? What old patterns, old beliefs are we clinging to that maybe aren't serving us anymore?
Whoa. Okay, that got deep fast. I
Yeah.
like it. It's like those nature documentaries. They zoom in on a single leaf falling, and suddenly you're contemplating the meaning of life.
Right. And who knows, maybe by observing those subtle shifts in nature, we'll gain a whole new perspective on our own, internal landscape. What parts of us are ready to change? What's ready to kind of blossom come springtime?
Okay, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
What other gems did you unearth from this treasure trove of prompts?
Yeah. Well, this one really resonated with me. How do you plan to celebrate the new year? And now you might be thinking, wait a minute, it's November. Isn't that a little early?
I have to admit that was my first thought. Isn't that like peak December anxiety material? Planning New Year's in November.
It could be, but I think the timing here is really intentional because it's not actually about planning a party or making reservations or any of that. It's about aligning your actions with your values. How do you want to show up in the new year? What energy do you want to embody?
It's like setting an intention for the kind of year you want to have rather than letting it just happen to you.
Exactly. And by starting to think about that stuff now, in the quiet of November, we give ourselves the time and space to actually make conscious choices. Choices that align with our deepest desires, so that we're not just reacting to whatever the holiday rush throws at us.
So that you're not just swept up in the frenzy and then wake up on January 1st wondering where the year went and what you did with it.
Precisely. It's about proactive planning versus reactive scrambling.
I'm sensing a theme here. Lestallion is not messing around with this whole November as launchpad concept.
Not at all. They're really encouraging us to seize this month, which is often overlooked, as a time for intentional transformation.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm ready to swap my pumpkin spice latte for a journal and get to work on crafting my ideal new year.
I love that energy. But before you do, I have one more prompt I want to share, and this one's particularly interesting. Describe a fictional character experiencing their first November.
Ooh, yes. We touched on that one earlier. Such a unique and unexpected prompt.
Right. And I think it's a testament to the power of storytelling as a tool for self-discovery. Because by creating this character who's experiencing November for the very first time, we're kind of forced to see the world through their fresh eyes.
It's like we're tapping into that childlike sense of wonder again. Like, ooh, what's this? It's cold. The leaves are doing something weird.
Exactly. And in doing so, we might just uncover some hidden truths about ourselves, or at least gain a newfound appreciation for the things we tend to take for granted. It's a reminder that even in the most familiar experiences, there's always something new to discover.
I love that.
If we're willing to look with open hearts and minds, of course.
And that's a beautiful note to end on, don't you think? We've touched on a lot of powerful prompts today, but there's one question that keeps coming back to me, and it's this. What one small change, inspired by all this reflection, are you ready to carry into December?
Absolutely. But before we get too comfortable, remember that lingering question I left you with.
Oh, right. The one about that one small change we want to carry into December.
Exactly. Because all this reflection is great, but it's meaningless if we don't actually put it into practice, right? So have you had a chance to ponder that question? What's your answer?
You know, I have been giving it some thought, and honestly, it wasn't easy to choose just one. But I think the change I want to focus on is cultivating a deeper sense of presence, especially during those, fleeting moments of beauty like we were talking about earlier that we often just miss in the rush of daily life.
I love that. It's such a powerful and important intention, especially as we head into the holiday season, which often can feel anything but present.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle, the endless to-do lists, the pressure to make everything perfect, that we forget to actually savor the experience, to connect with the people around us, to really appreciate the simple joys of the season.
It's like we're so busy planning for the future that we forget to live in the present moment.
Exactly. And that's what I want to be different this year. I want to slow down, pay attention, be fully present in each and every moment, even the chaotic ones, right?
I admire that intention. It's a practice for sure, but a worthy one, wouldn't you say?
100%. And I think it all starts with awareness, just by being mindful of those moments when our minds start to race ahead or get bogged down in the past, we can gently guide ourselves back to the present moment.
It's like we're training our attention muscles. building up our capacity to be present, even amidst distractions.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right.
And I think it's something we can all benefit from practicing, regardless of the time of year, but especially in November. This time of transition, of reflection, it feels like the perfect opportunity to set that intention and really start building those presence muscles.
Couldn't agree more. Now I'm curious, what about you? What one small change are you hoping to carry into December?
Back again, more November reflection fuel. These Lestallion prompts, I'm telling you, they sound simple at first, but they really get you thinking.
It's true. They're sneakily profound. Like that question we ended on last time. What one small change are you making? That's powerful stuff. But they've got even more where that came from. What else caught your eye as you were going through this batch?
Okay, this one totally stopped me in my tracks. What are you looking forward to learning or trying next teen November?
Yeah.
Next teen November, they're playing the long game here.
They are. It's like they're asking us to visualize our growth a year out. Not just who we are right now, but who we aspire to be.
Right. And I think it's way more effective than just your typical New Year's resolutions, which, let's be honest, those things are often forgotten by. Like February, this is about long-term vision, setting an intention for continued exploration and growth.
Yeah, so instead of I should really learn Spanish and then giving up after 3 weeks, it's more like, okay, picture yourself next to November. You're casually chatting with a local in Barcelona because your Spanish is so good.
Way more motivating, right?
Totally. It's that whole future you idea. Don't let future you down. They've got big plans, apparently.
Exactly. And that kind of speaks to a bigger theme I've noticed with these Lestallion prompts. It's not just about the past or even just the present moment. It's about how those reflections actually build the future you want.
And it's like they're giving you permission to dream big, but then they also hand you the toolkit to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay, I've shared some of my favorites. What about you? What other prompts really stood out to you? Okay, this one really got me thinking. How do you keep yourself motivated as the year winds down? Because honestly, that's a struggle for a lot of people.
Tell me about it. By November, that whole new year, new me energy has definitely faded, but we still have a whole month of the year left before we get to hit the reset button.
Exactly. So how do we stay motivated when it's dark by 5 p.m. and all you want to do is hibernate? Is it okay to embrace that cozy vibe, or do we have to fight it? It's the age-old dilemma.
Right.
But that's kind of the beauty of this prompt, isn't it? It's not about forcing productivity or denying ourselves rest when we need it. It's about finding that balance. What works for you?
Yeah, maybe for some people it is about setting smaller, more achievable goals as the year winds down. For others, maybe it's prioritizing self-care now, so they're actually energized going into the new year.
Right. Just recognizing that motivation naturally ebbs and flows throughout the year, and that's completely normal. In fact, just knowing that can help you plan for it better. It's not about being on all the time. It's about figuring out what keeps you moving forward, even if it's at a slower pace for a bit.
I like that it's permission to adjust as needed, which honestly, that's good advice for life in general, not just for November. Going through these prompts with you, it strikes me how much emphasis there is on self-awareness.
Absolutely. Lestallion's not hitting you over the head with it, but they're definitely guiding us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves through all these interesting questions. It's like they're saying, hey, before you can go conquer the world, or even just December, you got to get to know yourself pretty well first.
Because the more self-aware you are, the better equipped you are to handle whatever life or the holidays decide to throw your way.
100%. And you'll be more equipped to make choices that truly align with your values and your goals, not just, what everyone else is doing or what you think you should be doing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into November reflections, I think we've unearthed a lot more than just some journal prompts.
We have. Lestallion, they make nice journals, that's true. But they've also given us a really unique framework for approaching this time of year, maybe even life in general, with a bit more intention.
Who knew a stack of prompts could be so profound? Big thanks to our listeners for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time.